Now, as to this evening's topic, I have been following a curious method a few times now, last month and the month before, wherein I usually introduced my topic with some personal or with an account of some personal experience, and that's what I will do now. In the late 1970s, probably about 77, 78 or thereabouts, I found myself on business of my own in the eternal city of Rome. What my business was, I may tell you in great confidence when you come to me and if you ask me very nicely. But it's not really terribly important. What is important is that meeting me there was a long-time mentor and friend of mine whose name I had promised never to disclose. But if you read the prologue of my what some people considered my magnum opus, which is a nice Latin word of very highfalutin associations, but since I'm such a modest fellow, I accept it, namely the Gnostic Jung, and there he is mentioned as Professor J. That's as far as I can go with his name, because I promised him that I would never mention his name. But Professor J was a great influence in my life and a great and potent advisor and helper for a number of years. He died in the year of the Hungarian uprising while he was broadcasting on Radio Free Europe from Austria to Hungary, and he was so heartbroken over the outcome of that particular tragic episode that he had a heart attack and died in the studio. Very, very great and wonderful man. In any event, he had come in order to help me with a certain matter in Rome, and we were doing what one does in Rome if one is able to do it. We sat on the Via Veneto and were drinking coffee together. And while we were accomplishing this highly esoteric deed, he said to me, well, and because it pertained to our conversation, he said, you know, I have told you before that if you chose to come here to Rome, and that would have had to do with my career in the priesthood. I was already enrolled in one of the best seminaries there, the Collegio Germanico Hungaricum. And as if you choose to remain here and continue with this, things are likely to change very greatly, not only with external things in the church, but with church doctrine also. And some of these changes might be of very great interest to you. You might even like them. And I said, well, is that a prophecy? Professor, after all, he was a professor, you know. And he said, well, it could be a prophecy or not, but he said that some scriptures of ancient origin, of early New Testament times, have been found and are being scrutinized at the present times by the biblical scholars, and copies of them are in the archives of the Vatican. And he said that these scriptures, he knew something about their content already, are likely to have a very great impact on religious thought and might change a number of teachings of the various churches, and could cause, at least indirectly, if not directly, a very novel turn in much of biblical archaeology, biblical exegesis, and generally in religious studies. And since he knew of my great interest in Gnosticism, I said, could it possibly have something to do with Gnosticism? Probably in that voice, but in the Hungarian language. And he said, yes, it definitely does. This was the first time in my life, but certainly not the last, when I had a conversation about what came to be called the Nag Hammadi Library, and which still has a considerable influence on biblical studies and on the field of religion in Christendom and in really in many other places. So something I was told correctly, that some documents had been discovered which have a great potential for bringing about ways of studying and understanding biblical material, particularly the Christian religion, and which therefore might have a very far-reaching influence on world thought. Well, it came to pass by somewhat later, by the mid-1960s, there was one book that appeared, and somebody who is no longer with us triumphantly brought me a copy, and it was The Gospel According to Thomas, which was the first of the Nag Hammadi scriptures that saw the daylight and became available to the public. This was the first translation into English, which the translation was made by a team of scholars, among whom was someone whom, to my great delight, I had the good fortune of meeting later on, and who was here with us in Los Angeles 2 or 3 times, and that was Professor Gilles Quisper of Holland, of the University of Utrecht, who was a renowned expert on Gnosticism by that time, and the principal advisor on matters Gnostic or Gnostic related to C.G. Jung, since they were good friends. And so from there on things went and continued. Eventually I managed to meet and develop a friendship with Dr. James Robinson of Claremont, California, who was the founder and the head of the Institute for Antiquity and Christianity, where ultimately the normative English editions of all the Nag Hammadi library originated, and which was really a very, very important place, and was also owing to the sort of zany students who gathered there. It was a sort of a place of fun. So when a local friend, Dr. Adamson, a retired professor from USC, went with me, we always had a great deal of fun there. So these are personal vignettes, but they indicate something, that something important really happened. Now, obviously, discoveries of this sort have their lifetime of publicity, and then maybe they are no longer as frequently mentioned as at other times, and don't have as many commentaries, but certainly the Nag Hammadi library, and that is really what it should be called, because it was a whole, it wasn't just one or two or three books, it was a whole bunch of books, and the earliest books that had ever been produced, as far as we know, in the world. Because prior to that time we had things like the Dead Sea Scrolls, which are, as their name declares, scrolls. Scrolls of parchment, for the most part, that people write on it and are rolled up. And the use of scrolls even extended into the Middle Ages and so forth. But what happened in Alexandria and Egypt was that people started to write on papyrus, which was produced in Egypt. It's a product of the Egyptian swamps of the Nile River, because the reeds that grow there lend themselves to the making of papyrus, and we still have the name paper that comes from that source. And so they wrote on papyrus pages, which they then stacked up, and then they took usually a leather tongue or sort of something like a shoelace, and after putting some holes in it, they tied them together and put a piece of hard leather on top and a hard leather on the bottom. And these were the first books, as such, as far as we know them. And they were and are scriptures pertaining to the Christian religion in apostolic times, which means very shortly, and perhaps even at the time of Jesus, and just because of their chronological origin, immediately were the center of a great deal of interest, particularly of scholars. Now, that's the story of the Nag Hammadi library. Now the word gospel, which may be, people may have some ambivalence against it, which is like many ambivalences, almost anything in this world is worth being ambivalent about. Well, because it might be good, it might be bad, it might be enjoyable, it might be annoying, and therefore it's legitimate to be of two minds of various things in this world. And then maybe you'll make up one of those minds, and then you made up your mind, and then you can proceed with it. But let us say, especially since various developments in the Protestant churches, I would say that the word gospel and gospel religion and gospel Christianity and so forth acquired a worse than ambivalent reputation in many intellectual minds, and quite properly so, because the word gospel had become a sort of unfortunate buzzword, and still is, and it's really a pretty legitimate expression. The English word gospel comes from an early English word called Godspell, and meaning that it is something sacred and therefore perhaps informative and enchanting. It is a translation of the Greco-Latin word evangelion or evangelium, which in turn means, in Greek originally, means, more or less interesting or happy news. So, for instance, let's say when Caesar in Rome sent out a decree to the provinces, said, my people, I have good news for you. We are raising the taxes, something of that sort. And that would be an evangelion, the Greek word in English it would be EV and EU, means good and happy. For instance, the California town Eureka means hallelujah, oh good, something's good. Probably when the people came there, they thought this will be a great place to settle, so they exclaimed Eureka. But the EU indicates something good, just like the word Kakon means something bad. And in any event, so it's not, the gospel, the evangel is not really a bad word, but let's say eventually, particularly with the coming of conflicts of religious fanaticism after the coming of the Protestant Reformation, I'm always tempted to call it a Protestant Revolution, which it was also. It was much more of a revolution than a reformation. It, let's say, it acquired in many places the horror of blind book worship. So certainly that was not the nature of spiritual and religious scriptures throughout history, and certainly not at the time when what came to be called the Gospels, including the Nag Hammadi Gospels, were written. Now, the Nag Hammadi collection, or the Nag Hammadi library, is the largest collection of Christian scriptures, even though it contains a few others that are of non-Christian origin but were still included. Like there is one book which contains some of the writings of the Persian prophet Zarathustra and others, but let's say these scriptures, for the most part, are the expression of very early and by later judgment a heterodox form of Christianity. The two epithets that I mentioned are really connected, in the sense that it is at least my, and I'm not a biblical archaeologist or primarily a biblical scholar, although of course I had to do some of it, but let's say the very early Christian scriptures, very early Muslim scriptures are by later judgment, the judgment of later criteria, are usually quite heterodox. Because orthodoxies do not spring forth like from Zeus's forehead, but they develop over a period of time. And after a while people say, our version, our scripture, our interpretation, these are right, these are the truth, and everything else is deficient, and you shouldn't bother with it. And that is why, let's say, something like the Nag Hammadi library is of particularly great value, because almost every scripture there embodies an orientation toward religion, toward spirituality, toward the Christian tradition that is very different from what that tradition became later on. Now we know that at the present time, and for quite a long time, there have been in mainstream Christianity, there have been 4 Gospels: Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John. Whereas the kind of irreverent a little ditty in school would want to say. Let's see, how did that go? Jesus was of Judas' tribe. 4 Gospels did his life describe. They are sure a funny lot, each one has a different plot. And that's true to a certain extent. Certainly, much of the plot in the Nag Hammadi library is very, very much different from others. So we know that as a result largely of selection in subsequent years and centuries, Christendom settled on 4 Gospels, Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John. But interestingly enough, in the Nag Hammadi library, there are also 4 scriptures that bear the title Gospel. By the way, you know that it's interesting to see these old manuscripts, if possible, because one of the curious differences, other than the content, so often is that in let's say in these earliest books, the title is always in the back of the book, not in the beginning. So whether that is a momentous revelation to you that will send you home in utter joy, I don't know, but I thought I'll reveal it to you nevertheless. In any event, interestingly enough, in the Nag Hammadi collection or library, also there are found 4 scriptures that are called Gospel. And they are the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Philip, the Gospel of Truth, and the Gospel of the Egyptians. There are other very interesting scriptures there, and I'm going to mention some of them, but they are not called Evangelia or Gospels. Now, as I say, the first of these scriptures that was translated and then attracted quite a bit of attention is the Gospel according to Thomas, which is its title. And a little bit maybe said here, as one should, about the scribe or the author, namely Didymus Judas Thomas himself. There are several scriptures, not just the Gospel of Thomas, that are attributed to this particular apostle. One that was known for quite a long time is called the Acts of Thomas. Now there are apostolic acts which are different from the Acts of the Apostles. You know, the biblical scholarship is a very deceptive science. But the Acts of Thomas are entertaining wisdom about a particular, the adventures, physical and spiritual, of one particular man, the Apostle Didymus Judas Thomas. These have been long available. They contain, among others, the scripture which I think everybody should read if you find a good source for it. It's available in many collections, which is usually called the Song of the Pearl or the Hymn of the Robe of Glory, which is an absolutely magnificent poetic treatise depicting the journey of the human spirit, of human or the human soul to earth, and its recovery of a precious treasure here on earth, and then its return to heaven. It's one of the most beautiful and inspiring scriptures, I think, bar none. This is part of the Acts of Thomas. In fact, all of the various portions of the Acts of Thomas, I might as well take them a little bit from the beginning. The Acts of Thomas, which are not the Gospel of Thomas, The Gospel of Thomas is not contained in the Acts. The Acts have been around a long time, and they were very popular. They were read in monasteries and things like that, in spite of their rather manifestly heretical content sometimes. Why? Because they're so enjoyable. They are really enjoyable literature. Aha, there is my friend with the Hymn of the Robe of Glory. He has been working on the possibility of a motion picture made on its basis, and I think it would be a magnificent thing. In any event, the actual Acts of Thomas, which is not what we are supposed to be talking about tonight, but that is no news to you. I love to talk about things I'm not supposed to talk about. It's an old Gnostic habit. We talk about things and we think about things we are not supposed to talk about and not supposed to think about. But let's say, so Jesus Christ has been here already. He's gone to heaven, and Thomas was of course one of the very prominent apostles and disciples. And then all of a sudden he has a vision. He has an apparition that Jesus comes to him and says, Thomas, you have to go to India. And he said, me go to India? Oh no. And he felt about it probably like some of us would feel about it going there now. In any event, he receives the command in a vision to go to India. Then he packs up and gets on a boat that probably with some transfers and things, just like we have with the airplanes now, would get him to India, because it's a long, long time before the Suez Canal was built. So he gets on the ship, and the first stop is, I don't think there is the name of the city is mentioned, but is in a city where people change boats and things of that sort. Well, I might as well tell you a little bit, because that's quite important. So Thomas gets off the boat and wanders around in the city as a traveler will, and while he is there, he meets a girl, which I'm sure he was happy about, and the girl, like himself, happens to be Jewish. So they start talking in Aramaic, and so he tells her that he's traveling to India, he's only here for a short time, and she tells him, well, there's something interesting going on here tonight, you might want to come to that. So what is that? Well, it's a big wedding. And it's a very special wedding. It's not like any other wedding. And I think that you would be particularly interested in it. So I think you should come. She said, sure, where does it take place? So he comes, and there's a big lot of people there, and all kinds of things. And as he is there wandering about and looking at the various guests of the wedding, he begins to get a strange feeling that there's something different about this. There's something going on here that does not appear on the surface. And the lady who had invited him first comes and says, come, I show you where you'll have a little closer contact with the wedding. So they go through various, I think they're going upstairs, something, or they go through various layers of the building, and on each etage, how do you say it in English? On each floor. On each floor there is something else going on, and the higher they go, it becomes more and more mysterious and weird, and finally they come up to the top floor, and he's told, this is the bridal chamber of wisdom. And so the person, the being who is represented as the bride is wisdom, who weds, as subsequent disclosures seem to indicate, weds the human soul and the human spirit. So there are wonderful long poetic descriptions of this wedding, of the bridal chamber, of the bridesmaids, of all of which, once one looks at them more closely, have a very have various esoteric meanings. And so Thomas is inspired and transfigured by this wedding. And obviously, from a scholarly point of view, we might say that he has been introduced to a mysterious teaching that wisdom can wed the human soul, meaning that humans can become really wise in a transcendental sense. And this wisdom, of course, which in Greek is called Sophia, is also in addition to being a particular quality of consciousness, is also a celestial being. So he has been invited to see the wedding and the wedding chamber of wisdom, where wisdom is wed to humanity. That's a great thing. And the wonderful descriptions, very, very beautiful poetic description of the hymns that are being sung and the beautiful things that go on. And finally the wedding celebration is over, and he is ushered out, and he has to trudge back to his ship in order to sail for India. Mm-hmm. And he does. So this is his, quite toward the beginning of his journey, he has this intimation that this is going to be a very different journey. It is a journey of revelation. And he arrives in India, and interestingly enough, you see, you have to keep these strange things in mind, because it's very easy on all matters in life. It is very easy to take a very one-sided position. And one of the positions is that everything that people experience is physical or historical experience. If I may say so, as an irreverent Gnostic, I think that is the trouble to a major extent by the four canonical Gospels, Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John, that they contain, or at least they profess to contain, merely a bunch of historical events. Here Jesus was born, and then Jesus went there, and then he went and got, but these are all physical events in history that took place. And except for here and there some of his disclosures and sayings, they are stories. And stories, moreover, that since they are history, you might even say his story, their relevance, unless you work on them a great deal, to later historical periods diminishes, for which reason the four canonical Gospels don't draw the sort of attention these days that they probably did at earlier times. So, however, he has been informed that there is something deeper, and there is something, and that his master who initiated him, who taught him, still has something that he wants him to see, that he still has something to communicate to him. And so when they arrive in the south of India, to this day, so my friends told me, because I never made it there, in spite of good many invitations, very close to where the headquarters of the Theosophical Society is, on the outskirts of Madras, sort of where the Adyar River and the Bay of Bengal come together. To this day, there is a small mountain which is called St. Thomas Mountain. Not only is it called St. Thomas Mountain, but the locals will tell you it's called that because that's where the great Christian apostle Thomas was buried. So you say, well, oh, is he still there? No. And I'll tell you a little more about that later. But anyway, it's called, when you fly into Madras, as my friends would report to me, you literally fly over St. Thomas Mountain. So in any event, there we are, very, very close to his arrival. He is there in the south of India, and he does what the Christian apostle generally did. He goes around preaching about Jesus and converting people. And as this often happened in many places, those kinds of ministrations on the part of a recently arrived stranger were not terribly popular. And so the actual story says that one of the problems was that there was a local ruler, probably what now we would call a Maharaja whose wife became terribly interested in Thomas's teachings. And her husband didn't like that. And so her husband said that this is a troublemaker, maybe he's after his wife or whatever the case, but what we do with troublemakers is we kill them. And so Thomas is thrown into prison, where various other prisoners are, and after a longer and arduous imprisonment, he is executed. Then his body is, so he's martyred. His body is buried in St. Thomas Mountain. Now, this apparently had historical, undeniable historical connotations, and I well remember a number of years ago when the Parliament of World Religions took place. There was a big high holy hoopla, as a friend of mine would call it in Chicago. The Archbishop of the Syrian Orthodox Church in Bombay, Mar Paulus Gregorius, was there, and a very impressive, very nice gentleman. And I had the good fortune of doing a filmed interview with him. And so it's kind of seemed like a very nice gentleman, spoke beautiful English, of course. And so then, as we, Roberta and I, kept him company and walked with him here or there, he said, well, of course, St. Thomas was buried there, and we know the year when his remains were transported back to the Middle East, to Syria, and were reburied there in the Orthodox Church in Syria, whose representative he was. So they are no longer there, but we know that they were here and that he definitely was here. Well, and moreover, another interesting little vignette at that time, the Archbishop also said that, we have been reading the Gospel according to Thomas for a very long time. He said it's only recently that we agreed not to use it in the church because our sister church in Syria, the Syrian Orthodox Church, objected to it because everybody calls it a heretical gospel. But we had that gospel to begin with, and I felt like saying, well, good for you. In any event, let's say the sort of the framework, the external circumstances of the latter part of the life and then the death of Saint Thomas have been verified by people who are actually and they often are referred to officially as the Saint Thomas Christians. So this story of his coming to India, his experiences there, and his death are available in the Acts of Thomas, the particular work, which has been around for quite a period of time already. But it was also known and voiced about that there was a gospel. It is called a gospel according to Thomas. And that some people who usually were regarded as not very orthodox, not very mainstream, Manichaeans, Coptic Christians, Gnostic Christians, had possession of this Gospel of Thomas, and so occasionally references have been made to it. Some portions of it, in just a few individual verses, were discovered in the 1920s in Egypt on the shore of the Oxyrhynchus River, for which reason they are called, believe it, the Oxyrhynchus papyrus. It is just such a wonderful name, you know. So just to, if you want to meditate on a mantra, just sit down and keep telling yourself, Oxyrhynchus papyrus, Oxyrhynchus papyrus. But don't take my words literally, if you please. In any event, there were a number of individual sayings there. Nobody knew where they came from. They just were found near the old riverbed. Well, now we know where they came from, because they were all individual verses, small ones, from the much larger work, the Gospel of Thomas. So the Gospel of Thomas has been around, but it was also regarded as heterodox or heretical. Now, so we have the Acts of Thomas. We have, and yet another book was also in the Nag Hammadi library, but it's not as exciting as the Gospel of Thomas, and that one is called the Book of Thomas the Contender, because one of his reputations was that he wanted to make sure that the resurrected Jesus was really the resurrected Jesus, and when he went and touched his wounds, so he contends against what is going on. In any event, now, so there is quite a bit of Thomas literature all over, and with the discovery of the Nag Hammadi library, there is even more. But the one that we are interested in at this time, and for good reasons. When I read to you some of the logia and the sayings, you will see why. I would say the most concentrated, the most concise, and in many instances the most powerful of all the Thomas literature is undoubtedly the Gospel according to Thomas. Oh, other little vignette that may be useful. Thomas is also referred to, right in the Gospel of Thomas, is referred to as Didymos Judas Thomas. Judas, of course, being undoubtedly his one. It was a very common Jewish name, not just of the name of the betrayer in the canonical Gospels, but Didymos, which is Greek, means the twin. And so this gave the biblical scholars also a bit of perplexity. They tried to figure out why was he called a twin. Maybe he was a twin when he was born, but none other than Elaine Pagels, who of course was the great popularizer of the Nag Hammadi library, with her book The Gnostic Gospels, which appeared I think about 1977. I remember hearing her before she published the book in Claremont, and I thought she was one of the college girls, a very nice looking young lady with one of the long hairdos of that time. You know that ladies used to iron their hair to be nice and long at the time. Anyway, Elaine was attracted good attention, and her, at least her statement in her book, and I think also otherwise in some of her lectures, was that there was reliable information that indicated that Thomas was called the twin because he was considered so close to Jesus that he was the spiritual twin of Jesus, Didymus Thomas. Well, whatever the case may be, certainly his message and the sayings of Jesus that he collected, and which are in the Gospel according to Thomas, are very remarkable and would point in that direction. Now, let's see. So what is this? If you expect a Thomas like the four canonical Gospels, like Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John, is not that, because it's not a story. It is a collection of sayings. And these sayings are all, each and every one starts with the words, Jesus said, Jesus said, Jesus said. So what this is a collection of sayings of Jesus, which for the most part, there are some that have parallels in the canonical Gospels, but that have not made it into the canon, and many of which are very revealing. So this is how the Gospel of Thomas starts. These are the words which the living Jesus spoke, and Didymus Judas Thomas wrote. He who will understand these words will not taste death. This is the first saying in the Gospel of Thomas. Now, what we have here is a revelation which requires some insightful approach, but which when insightfully approached, you come to the conclusion that there are 114 individual sayings, all of which are attributed to Jesus, and they all start with, and Jesus said, Jesus said, Jesus said. But let's say the sayings are of a peculiar nature in my estimation. Not everybody would say so, because it seems that when you really look at them with as much concentration and with as much spiritual insight as you can muster, you will see that they reveal two characteristics of the person from whose mouth they originally came. And that very much accords with what many of the early Christians, especially Gnostic Christians, attitude would have been. These two are that the person who utters these sayings is first of all a teacher. So many of the logia, the sayings, teach, but that he is also something else. And the something else is that he is a hierophant, he's an initiator, he's someone who passes on spiritual power to those with whom he is dealing and who are deeply affected and at times downright transformed by that spiritual power. I will come around to this motif in a few minutes, because on other scripture, quite apart from the Nag Hammadi library, has been discovered since, which is, well, it's not really correct to say that the scripture has been discovered, but quotations from the scripture and commentary on the scripture by a great saint of the Orthodox Church and generally of the early church, of Clement of Alexandria, who refers to another lost gospel that we still don't have at this particular time, which is the secret gospel of Mark. And then a very tremendous controversy about it. You know, there are no people who can argue and fight and become vituperative toward each other than biblical scholars. Well, university scholars in general are ill-tempered lot, if you have ever been around them, but the biblical scholars are the worst. I don't know why. It's probably because they are, every day they have to deal with sacred things, and so their psyche wants to create a balance. I really wouldn't know. I would need a good Jungian analyst to analyze them. But in any event, it's short. What the quotations that we have there are short, but they are very, very important. And this indicates that the founder of the Christian religion, while certainly also a teacher, is in addition to that an initiating agent of a mystery. He's a hierophant, he's a psychopomp who mystically and magically leads those who are thus chosen or who are chosen by him in that fashion into a transformative mystery within themselves. And that this, of course, is also something that the prosaicization, the rendering prosaic of the Christian message, which came about over the century, a lot of prosaic-minded Dummkopf, as we would call them in German, stupid heads, had, trivialized and reduced those few authentic disclosures about the life and about the teachings of Jesus that were available. And some of them are now coming to the fore. But just a little saying about the first saying. Why does it say that he who will understand the meaning of these words will not taste death? That's a pretty big saying, because in the mundane sphere we are sort of convinced that pretty much everybody whom we know about, including to our regret even ourselves, that we do taste death. So how could the mere access to this text be something that prevents death? Well, of course, now we get into that area where an understanding of truly the secret meanings is necessary, because in the Gnostic, in the early Christian Gnostic view, and in that terminology, our earthly life is death. So maybe you didn't think that you were sitting here in a room full of corpses, but let's say according to the esoteric teachings, why is that so? Because by coming to Earth and living here, not even speaking of all the stupid things that we are likely to do, we ourselves have succumbed to a spiritual death. And we are here trying to wake up, trying to resurrect. Imitatio Christi, imitation Christ. What he did at the end? Resurrected, right? And of course there are others. So it's an indication in metaphorical terms that we need to undergo a big change. We need to undergo a change wherein we have no longer tasted death, where we are not spiritually dead, but where we are moving to our ultimate destiny, to our true home and to our true nature. So this already in the first saying, this is implicit. But you might say how you have to have some, yes, you have to have an understanding of the metaphor. You have to be someone who knows that that's the idea of a spiritual death from which we need to awaken, that we are all in need of a resurrection, as Angelus Silesius, a great German mystic, wrote, "Though Christ 1,000 times in Bethlehem be born, and not in thee thy soul is all forlorn, the cross at Golgotha standeth up in vain, unless indeed be erect again," which of course also means that, and he who rolls away, this was Blavatsky's recension of it, he who rolls away the stone from the door of his own inner sanctuary, he has the risen Christ in him. So these are the secret meanings that, and what's the nature of the secret? Almost anything in any of these scriptures and the references to them, where the issue arises that, well, this is a secret meaning. I'll mention one about the secret Gospel of Mark in a minute. But what is the secret? The secret is that you are here to wake up to a spiritual life, that you are here to resurrect, that the whole message of the Messiah is to the effect of facilitating a spiritual awakening, a spiritual resurrection, a tremendous, incredible alchemical change within you. If that happens, then he has succeeded with you. If that doesn't happen, well, then you are a run of the mill Babel Christian, if you don't mind me babbling. You see, so this is the secret meaning is the meaning that the initiator, the psychopomp, the whatever we want to call him, the Hierophant, brought. The others are him as a teacher. So there are always these two roles in this case of Jesus, the teacher and the Hierophant. And when we look at some of the other great esoteric figures like Mani, who the Persian prophet, who was really the successor of Jesus, and he knew it too. What he would do the same thing. He would say, all right, I'll give you a straight story, a prosaic story, and then this has a deeper meaning. This has a secret meaning. But the secret is not, this is what we have to keep in mind. It's not that sort of thing of like the children playing and they say, I've got a secret. It's not that somebody knows and and you don't, but rather that it's secret because you must discover it. You are the one who will solve the secret, not somebody else, not even Jesus. Jesus gives you the hints how to do it, and because he is the teacher and he is the initiator, and so do all the various other great teachers. But that is the important thing. So that in itself is of some importance. So now what I will do, as long as I don't keep you too long or keep even myself too long, I will select from the text of the Gospel of Thomas various logia, various sayings. I will always mention the number because they are numbered, and so when people want to look them up in one of the translations, that is how they would find them. And when I wrote one of my books, probably this one, Jung and the Lost Gospels, I actually organized the sayings of the Gospel of Thomas into categories of their message. And I think it was like 15 different meanings according to which the sayings organized themselves. And I will mention the meaning, and then I will mention the saying itself. This is from the sayings that concern the human condition. Let me see, do we have an earlier one? No, that's the one. This is the 29th saying. And they are almost all preceded by the words, Jesus said, Jesus said, Jesus said. So they are authenticated by coming from the teacher in Hierophant. If the flesh has come to be because of the Spirit, it is a wonder or a marvel. But if the Spirit has come to be because of the body, that is a wonder of wonders. But I wonder how such a great wealth has come to dwell in this poverty. Very interesting. So what you really have here is a sort of a double message, that if this incredible transcendental spiritual potential, this deific nature, which dwells deeply hidden and yet ultimately accessible in the human being, is truly there, then the physical death and the coming into the realm of the physical death is something that needs to be overcome. But I wonder how such a great wealth of the Spirit, has come to dwell in this poverty. So an impoverishment, these are all metaphors. Metaphor is that this is a death. This is the world of death, and which can be interpreted in various ways, all of which would probably be right. You know, one very instructive, I shouldn't digress too much, but temptation is so immense, you know. One way in which we can experience this type of intentionality, for instance, is do what I like to do, but I think a lot of people would consider it morbid, is to look at the various medieval depictions of life and death. They're wonderful things. They are mostly skeletons, and the skeletons, well, for instance, you have a whole orchestra of skeletons. They all have their instruments and they fiddle away and so forth. You know, all sorts of things of this sort, which all indicate that, you know, you think that you are alive, and you think that you are interacting with all alive people, But if you are not spiritually awake, as you were intended to be, if you don't make contact with that heavenly world that certainly Jesus and the other great teachers came from and represented, then what are you doing? You know, you're in the living death. And yet, you know, what I really like about these Totentanz and so forth, the dance of the dead, you know, they're very Halloweeny. If you get one of those books, you feel like you're in Halloween. There they are, all the skeletons have such a kind of a happy disposition, like you know, they are playing these instruments and some of them are dancing. It's sort of an indication, you know, yes, you're here in the body of death, but you know, don't worry about it too much. If you listen to the right things, if you do the right kinds of meditations and magic and prayers and so, you know, you won't be dead anymore. This your death-like condition, your dead-headedness, Dummkopferei, you know, your death-headedness is not meant to last. If you work at it, you can awaken. If you work at it, you can resurrect. If you work at it, you become what you really were intended to become. And that sort of comes forth from these medieval drawings. If you're very afraid of death, as a lot of people are, we certainly saw that in the COVID hysteria, then they could help you to unbecome afraid, you know. And that's quite important, because what is to be feared is spiritual death. What is to be feared is a lack of contact with the divine. That is the darkness. In any event, he says, I wonder how such great wealth has come to dwell in this poverty, so that when you see the limited nature of humans and of human life and of the unfortunate things that they get involved in and the stupid things that they do and that they sing and that they emote, then you see you are this something great and wonderful and wise and joyous and transcendental has come to live in a poverty. And yet, riches is available. Because that is why people like Jesus, that is why people like Thomas, Prophet Mani, various other people come. They come to restore the treasure to the individual. And by restoring the treasure, then the poverty into which we have sunk, and you know, it's not a bad way of expressing it, because you try to say, I certainly do, you try to think of something wise. You try to think of something happy and joyous and transcendental. And you know what? It won't come. Doggone it, you know, here it is, I'm trying. There's something up there saying, you know what? I don't think you're ready. You didn't do it right. And so it doesn't come. And that's the poverty, that we are spiritually impoverished. And what do we do then? We follow teachings and practices and lifestyles, professions in the world which are not helpful to us. And if we could get away from them, they are the poverty. Well, you know, I have no intention of going into it, but let us say I would bet my bottom dollar, if I had one, namely that if you continue to allow your vision to be blinded, to be limited, to be reduced to external things. Doesn't make any difference whether that external things is electronic or whether it is something else. This kind of tonic, that kind. These things rob you of the kind of vision and of the kind of consciousness that you require, and then you will no longer be in that condition. Now let's look another one or two, because old Thomas is going to be angry with us if we. Here is the best and the shortest of the sayings. It's saying 42. Jesus said, "Become passers-by." In other words, pass by everything that the world is offering to you. Pass it by. Keep going. And if you pass by these things which don't have any spiritual potential, which are really unable to help you, which can only distract you, then you are doing well. So Jesus said, "Become passers-by." Now let's see another one. This is saying, 50th saying is a good one. If they say to you, and this often happens, and it says, by they being the people who are around, if they say to you, "From where are your origins?" say to them, "We have come from the light," when the light has begun through itself. If they say to you, "Who are you?" say, "We are his children, and we are the chosen of the living Father." If they ask you, "What is the sign of your Father in you?" say to them, "It is a movement and the rest." Now here again, the earlier sentences are quite understandable on a rational level. Who are you? We are the children of the great parents, the chosen of the living Father. But what is the sign of the Father in you? It is a movement and a rest. What is this? Well, these are the statements that come from a transcendental wisdom. These are the statements that are the result of a transforming, insightful soul, and since they are thus, they are extremely helpful. Yes, what is the sign of your Father in you? It is a movement and a rest, which can be alchemically, can have an alchemical meaning, all kinds of meanings, but it indicates sort of the two, the action and the contemplation. We have to contemplate our inner nature, we have to meditate, we have to pray, we have to be in touch with the deeper things, but then we also will be capable of expressing our insight outwardly. Let's see another one. The movement is the dynamic change I am quoting here somebody who wrote this book, and I'm afraid his name is too similar to mine. So that movement stands for the principle of dynamic change, as evidenced by becoming, realization, living whereas quiet may be taken to signify the pleromic state of equipoise. Now another one. Saying 63. There was a rich man. There are some parables, because that was the style of the times. There was a rich man who had much wealth. He said, "I will use my goods so that I may sow and reap and plant and fill my granaries with fruit, so that I will not be deprived. That was what he thought in his heart. And that same night he died. Whoever has ears, let him hear. Don't put your trust in external things and external achievement. You need to achieve some things. We all need to have a livelihood. We all need to eat. We all need to have a roof over our heads, and we need to have various things that make for a pleasant lifestyle. But be aware that no matter how much the outer world and its forces try to convince you otherwise, you know what? You are not in charge. You are not in charge. You are in charge of some things, and you have access to that which truly is in charge. That's the important thing. Here's another one. Saying 79. A woman from the assembly said to him, Blessed is the womb which bore thee, and the breasts which fed thee. He said to her, Blessed are those who have heard the word of the Father and have kept it in truth. For there will be days when all of you will say, Blessed is the womb which has not conceived, and the breasts which have not fed any child. Now, I don't think he was talking about the current abortion controversy. But once again, what is beyond this world, what is beyond the concerns in this world, there you may find what you really need. Oh, here is one that became the source of a lot of interpretation. Simon Peter said to him, and Simon Peter doesn't come off terribly good in Thomas. I think they were not great friends. Simon Peter said to them, that's the people who were around the disciples, Let Mary depart from among us. This would be Mary Magdalene, because women cannot be worthy of the life. Quite a guy, isn't he? Jesus said, I shall direct her so that I will make her male, that she may be a living spirit in your eyes, just like you men. For every woman that becomes inwardly a male will enter the kingdom of heaven. Well, now the people with the sex changes would be just unbelievably happy about this. I can just envision reading this saying, which is the 114th saying, to the transies and whatever they are called, you know. But of course, what we are meant here is a transcendental condition, a condition that the opposites become active in people. Now here is another one. Oh yeah. Now this of course is one that would bother not the transsexuals so much, but rather the people who are in love with commandments, discipline. If you fast, you will start a sin for yourselves. And if you pray, you may be still condemned. And if you go alms, you will do injury to your spirits. And if you go, it's all the things that were advocated at the time. And if you go away into any country and travel in the regions, if they welcome you, eat what they place before you, and heal the sick among them. For what goes into your mouth will not pollute you, but what comes out of your mouth, that is what will pollute you. Of course, this has a parallel in the the last sentence. So, what are we talking about here? Oh, be a vegetarian, be a vegetarian. That will do it. Well, all it will do is that you will eat vegetables. That's what it'll do. And if you go away into any country and travel in the regions, if they welcome you, eat what they place before you. Whether it's I hope it's a good dish of goulash. But let's say, in other words, be accommodating to the circumstances. And heal the sick among them, for what goes into your mouth will not pollute you, but what comes out of your mouth, that is what will pollute you, because it is the expression of your spirit. Now, we still have a few. I have to look at my watch. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, this is a very famous one and a very, very interesting and mysterious one. Jesus said to his disciples, Speak a comparison to me and tell me whom I am like. Simon Peter said to him, Thou art like a righteous messenger, which is the same as angel. Matthew said to him, Thou art like a sage with wisdom. Thomas said to him, Master, my mouth cannot express whom thou art like. Jesus said, I am not thy master, because thou hast drunk, thou hast become inebriated by the babbling spring which I have measured out. And he took Thomas, and he withdrew and uttered 3 words. When Thomas came back to his companion, they asked him, What did Jesus say to thee? Thomas said to them, If I tell you one thing which he said to me, you will raise up stones and throw them at me, and fire will issue from the stones and burn you up. Pretty cryptic saying, but let's say it's nice to take a vote sometimes. What do you think? What did Jesus say to him? Well, and actually in one of the translations it says that Jesus said 3 words to him. Not in this translation. So I had the feeling with my blasphemous Gnostic mind that what he said to him was, Thou art God. Which would be a pretty rough thing in many minds. And if I tell you one of these, which he said to me, you will raise up stones and throw them at me, and fire will issue from the stones and burn you up. And here is probably one of the most beautiful ones, the 17th saying, the promise. I will give you what no one's eye has seen, and what no one's ear has heard, and what no hand has touched, and what has not arisen in the heart of a human being. Let's see, where is it? And there are various ones where he identifies himself as being of the highest region of the heavens and divinity. I am the light that is above them all. I am the all. The all came forth from me, and the all became me. Cleave the wood, I am there. Raise up the stone, and you will find me there. So this is the transcendence and the omnipresence all in one. That's the 77th saying. And here is, I think, a very good admonition. A couple of them. 67th saying and the 70th saying. He who knows the all, but fails to know himself, lacks everything. These are the injunctions for self-knowledge. And another one, which is the 70th, if you bring forth what you have within you, that which you have within you will redeem you. If you do not have it within yourselves, that which you do not have will kill you. And probably one of the most meaningful over here, and then I need to move on to some related material. The disciple said to him, "Tell us how our end will be." Jesus said, "Have you then found the beginning, so that you ask about the end? For where the beginning is, there will be the end also. Blessed is he who shall stand at the beginning, and he shall comprehend the end, and he shall not undergo death." So see, the important thing is our transcendental nature and our transcendental origins. For if we make contact with that where we began, for where the beginning is, there will be the end. So if we need to come together with the point of utter transcendence, which indicates to you where we came from, who we are, and therefore also where we are going, because those are the ones where we go. So the important thing is then is transcendental vision. Now, these are just a very small sample or sampling from the individual sayings of the Gospel of Thomas. But we may need to keep in mind in that connection something that I indicated before, but that is worth remembering. And it's very strange that often, and it's that way in history, when one or two truly important, transformative, revelatory discoveries are made in some fashion, then they draw to themselves others. This is how it was with the Hermetic books. When Lorenzo de' Medici ordered those translated that he found, then they found more, and this is a somewhat similar situation. A very important, although gravely misunderstood find came about a few years after the Nag Hammadi find by an American scholar from Columbia University by the name of Morton Smith, was working in the library of the monastery of St. Catherine in the Sinai. St. Catherine of Alexandria is herself a very, very interesting figure, but our time is up, so I don't want to drag things out further. But let's say, for one thing, that is the saint after whom Catalina Island in the channel here was named, and it's a very interesting person. So it is also the place where which has, I think, the largest collection of original and very, very valuable icons in the world. there was an exhibit some years ago of some of the icons of the monastery of St. Catherine at the Getty Museum. And two monks from the monastery, this is in Egypt, you know. In fact, it's one of those places that had once been Israel and then been Egypt. In any event, the two monks came with them, and the monks were there day and night watching the icons. They were going around with their Orthodox rosaries praying, but anybody who came close to the icons, he would have to fight it out with these monks with their big beards. Very, very interesting looking people. So that's the monastery of St. Catherine. Well, in the monastery of St. Catherine, Professor Morton Smith was working in the library looking for old things. And he came across, mind you, not another book, but pasted into the cover of one of the ancient books, he discovered a letter. This letter was written by Clement of Alexandria, the great church father, and it refers to and quotes a scripture that we have never discovered yet, which is called the Secret Gospel of Mark. Now, I don't know how much I can go into that, but anyway, let's say the essence of it being that he quotes from the Secret Gospel, and some of that has to do with, it's an interpretation of the raising of Lazarus by Jesus. Only something strange about it. You come to the passage, and Lazarus is in the grave, and Jesus comes to the grave. But unlike in the canonical Gospels, it is not Jesus who calls out to Lazarus, 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 rise. But Lazarus, the dead man, calls out to Jesus. And then Jesus puts his hand down, reaches out, pulls him out, and then spends the evening with him in secret and leaves in the morning, and Lazarus is quite happy. So Lazarus has been dead, but he has been dead in terms of being in the physical body. And Jesus, it's quite evident, and Jesus bestows an initiation on him. Now that has caused all kinds of balderdash on the parts of the scholars, but the issue of it was that Lazarus wears very scanty clothing, because that's how he was in the grave, and they tried to give all kinds of crazy interpretations of that. But as very correctly has been pointed out, Lazarus wears exactly the kind of garb with which he comes out allegedly from the grave, that the initiates of the Eleusinian mysteries, of the Orphic mysteries, and some others were, they wear a loincloth, because they have divested themselves of worldly things. And that and various others indicate that what the story of the raising of Lazarus is about is an initiation. And that Jesus was not only a teacher, Jesus was an initiator. He was here to raise those who are spiritually dead and bring them back to a spiritual life. And that the Clement of Alexandria knew this. It's really very interesting to read about that, but we don't really have the time at this moment. But it is it is quite evident. Clement, now this is a great church father, great saint. Clement says, if somebody tells you that there exists, that there is a secret doctrine of Mark, deny it. It makes the people lie. Why? Because the secret Gospel of Mark indicates that there is a great magical initiation going on here, and that Jesus is an initiator, like an initiator of the mysteries, and they didn't want that to come out into the open. So that actually that fragment of a letter which contains passages from the secret Gospel of Mark, which as yet is in toto undiscovered, is the greatest proof that we had that in early Christianity, and perhaps in connection with Jesus himself, was an initiatory process. And that when Lazarus is brought out of the grave, maybe there is somebody here, or at least you have heard of it, that in some survivals of the mysteries at the present time, there is one which some of us have undergone, where the initiate lies in the grave, and then the master comes and pulls him out of the grave. I'm talking about the Masonic initiation of the Master Mason. So this is the process of the mysteries, and so the secret Gospel of Mark is the greatest proof that we have that whatever other functions may have been fulfilled by the early Christian religion, the spiritual initiation was definitely one, and that Jesus the Messiah was not only a teacher but was an initiator. Now, what about all of this? I think you have probably noticed that I'm not in the best shape for some reason tonight, and so I don't think I was at my best. But let's say, nevertheless, even though I don't think anybody ever will be able to express the incredibly powerful spirit that runs through the Gospel of Thomas. And you say, well, who said all of these things? Somebody said these things who was able to bring people out of spiritual death, and who had the power to initiate people into a very deep mystery. And one wonders, all right, where did all of this go in Christendom? Why has it been suppressed? Why isn't it here? And this is, of course, the great question of the Gnosis at the present time. Look, some very important, some very beautiful, some very enlightening, very salvific, life-giving elements, practices, and teachings have simply been made to disappear over the years. But inasmuch as they refer to principles and processes which pertain to the human being as a birthright, and can be awakened by initiation, and can be awakened by spiritual practices, a great and important work had been done, and we need to see how we can revive it and how we can practice it ourselves. It is the eternal message of the initiator, the eternal message of the messenger. And that is, of course, what Jesus and all the others were. They are, and that is why it is an evangelion, it is a happy message, because the messenger has come. And as one beautiful, I don't know if there's anybody here who knows German tonight, maybe somebody else. There's a very beautiful Christmas, one of the Christmas hymns that we used to sing in Austria, which ends with the great chorus, Christus der Retter ist da. Christus Christ the Rescuer is here. So we live in a world, folks, where everything and everybody needs to be rescued. And yet the promise of the rescue is there. You can't rescue yourself. You can prepare yourself for the rescue. But the rescue is here. Out of the mysterious realm which we cannot describe, but of which we have a vague memory, there reaches a hand. And that hand is pulling us out of living death, pulling us out of wrong-headedness, pulling us out of hostility, of involvement in activities that do not deserve that kind of involvement. And we find various excuses why this should not be made available either to us or we are not going to tell Mary Magdalene because women are not worthy of that. So we find some reason why it shouldn't be imparted. There was some reason why to be parsimonious with the grace which is available. But while we might be parsimonious, while we might be denying, while we might be nasty to each other, there is something here. There is something here that is good, that is open, and that has always been ready to reach out to us like Jesus reaches out into the grave of Lazarus and pull us out and pull us into a condition wherein we recover our original birthright, where we have been awakened by the awakener and rescued by the rescuer. And what can be greater and more magnificent than that? We need to be rescued. We need help. And yet that help is available. And these early people, like Saint Clement of Alexandria, that they knew that. And they also knew that the initiatory activity of Jesus and so forth should be, like all the initiations, should be secret until it is bestowed on someone. So what I'm just doing now is in vain. I'm telling you about something that, however, I'm also telling you, and I'm telling myself, that if we have the right attitude, if we do the right things, if we pursue the right path of the rescuer, then the rescuer will be there. Around the corner in this darkened and stormy and strange world, there is a power, the objective of which is to rescue us, to bring us out of the living death in which we have been living, and to bring us into a wonder, into a glory, into a freedom, which, interestingly enough, is not totally alien to us. You know, there is a knowing. It has been said, knowing is remembering. And so the fact that we are attracted to the mystery, in whichever way it may come to us, the fact that while we may be lying in, or at least metaphorically, in the grave, but we recognize the initiator when he comes and when he says, Lazarus, Lazarus, I am here, and brings us out of death. This is of very, very great importance, because we are heirs to freedom, we are heirs to goodness, we are the inheritors of something very wonderful. And mind you the word inheritor, because it is not really something that we earn right now. It was ours to begin with. Why? Because of who we are. We are the sparks of the light from beyond this world. We are the children of the eternal. We are those who are ready to be liberated. And maybe just this slight little excursion into what Didymus Judas Thomas wrote, because he remembered what he has been told will have been to our advantage. And I assure you that when we look at some of the other secret Gospels, particularly the one of Philip, which I think is the next one, you will find it different, but also very, very great power and great inducement to liberation. And so I somewhat apologize for my feeble presentation this evening, but you know, when you are 93 years old, are you going to do better? I don't know. So in any event, you know, all we can do with this is what has been done. They are intimations. The intimation that something very wonderful is available. Something very wonderful is there. And if we are ready to receive it, then we can climb out of the grave like Lazarus, and then we are in the resurrected, the glorified state in which we return to that mysterious place which in thought and in mind we had left, but which perhaps in reality we have never left. And it only needs a change, an initiatory change inside. Only something needs to click, and then we are back where we belong, where we have been, and where we are going. And may that day and that hour come soon, until which time we pray and we aspire and we study, and and our aspiration will not be without reward. So I thank you very much, and I hope to see you next time. You know, there are volumes of the Gospels that are being published, which include Thomas now, five Gospels in them. So it has become a very important text. But once again, the real text, the real book, you know, is inside here. These things can stimulate. These things can awaken these people. These things can lead us to that. So thank you again very much, and I promise you more and possibly better later. And please take a look at our announcement over there of the possible class. We hope to have it on the fourth Thursday of every month, and we'll start on the first Thursday this month. Okay, thanks so much.